A recent study by Harvard researchers found a new way to potentially diagnose depression, and it involved using a cell phone.
Well, joining us with a look at the research and potential impact on the medical world is Dr. Sabrina Fabi. Also, nice to see you here. So what happened in this study where they detected depression by phone?
I know. So they were actually monitoring different facial expressions as well as tone of voice. And they were able to detect through this particular app depression in about 80% of patients who were actually depressed. So the sensitivity was 80%. And this is just a first run using this device. Now, it was somewhat helped by a physician that was using the device and kind of placing it in front of a person. But this is really where we're going right now with the ability to detect depression. And what we're seeing with depression is the incidence is on the rise. I know that we covered this when we talked about Snapchat dysmorphism.
Right.
With people more and more that are on social media and other platforms, we're seeing an increase in depression as well as in anxiety. So now to capture this and to be able to diagnose more people, now they actually even have apps to do it.
It's so interesting. It seems a little ironic to me that you're using an app to diagnose depression, and yet phone usage could be a big part of the reason why people are depressed, because they're sitting on their devices all day.
Instead of communicating or having human connection, where there's a false sense of connection on your device, right? And so what I found very interesting about this study was the ability of facial expressions to really be a marker for whether you're depressed or not. Because right now what we're seeing more and more are studies underway using neuromodulators such as Botox, where they're trying to see if you can minimize the expression that is associated with depression. Can you potentially also minimize the signs of depression? And so right now in some earlier studies that they've done in smaller cohorts, it actually can improve the symptoms of depression in at least 50% of patients by more than 50%, which is better than some of the oral medications that we have.
And it sounds like this is pretty accurate from what you're saying already.
Right, for something that it's such a primitive stages, it is pretty accurate. And so I think that we're going to see it probably get built up a little bit more so that it can be more sensitive in detecting the disease.
Let me go back to your comment about the Botox thing, because I think that's really interesting, because they talk about like frown lines or frown wrinkles.
Right.
Well, that could be a sign that you're doing a lot of frowning, or maybe you are depressed. But then if you have Botox, is that like masking then what you're really feeling, or are they noticing if you get that and you don't have those kind of frown lines, that you actually are less depressed?
The thought is that if you can't make the movement, there is some feedback that starts to happen to the brain.
Interesting.
That minimizes the sensation or the feeling of being sad or down. I think they have to kind of work on why that is.
Right.
It's probably not as clear cut as they think it is. It's usually more complex in medicine, but nevertheless, that's the reason why I think it's seen such favorable results in earlier trials.
Right, and maybe even interesting just using the cell phone with this specific study, as you always talk about the advancements in medicine. I can see this being used for other things as well.
Right, to diagnose other conditions.
Right.
Especially when people are in rural areas where they can't get access so quickly. We could be diagnosing many other things.
Yeah, Dr. Fabi, always great to have you around the table. Thank you, an early Merry Christmas.
Yes, Merry Christmas to you.